In hockey, few things feel more unnatural than seeing a legend in the wrong jersey. Yet time and time again, some of the NHL's biggest stars ended up far away from home, chasing a cup, outlasting their prime, or parting ways with management on sore terms. This is the story when greatness took a detour. From Wayne Gretzky's strange stop in the St. Louis Blues to Bobby Orr's quiet end in Chicago. These are the moments where legendary careers took an unexpected turn. By early 1996, Wayne Gretzky was already the Great One, holder of countless NHL records and 4 Stanley Cup rings from his Edmonton days. At age 35, he was in the final years of his contract with a struggling Los Angeles Kings team, well out of contention. Unwilling to lose a superstar for nothing in free agency, the Kings entertained offers, and St. Louis Blues GM/coach Mike Keenan, eager to make a bold push for a championship, showed interest. In a headline-grabbing deadline trade, the Blues acquired Gretzky in February 1996 for a package of young players and picks that was modest considering his stature. The idea of pairing the greatest playmaker ever with Brett Hull, one of the era's most lethal goal scorers, had Blues fans dreaming of a Stanley Cup parade. From day one, the hype was sky high. Gretzky was immediately named team captain, and he scored his first goal in his first game as a Blue, igniting hopes that his magic touch would carry St. Louis to glory. And indeed, Gretzky produced a point-per-game pace, 21 points in 18 regular season games down the stretch. But the Gretzky-Hull partnership never really caught fire. The two friends had strong mutual respect, but their chemistry fell short of expectations. Gretzky never really clicked with Hull, the way everyone had expected him to. A concussion suffered by Gretzky in just his second game with the St. Louis Blues, which wasn't considered a big deal at the time, possibly could have also subtly affected his play. Meanwhile, the Blues as a whole underachieved. Despite a roster filled with veteran talent and Hall of Famers, the St. Louis Blues barely made the playoffs. In the postseason, Gretzky obviously showed flashes of his brilliance. He led the Blues with 16 points in 13 playoff games, but there were frustrations as well. In the second round against the Detroit Red Wings, coach Mike Keenan controversially benched Gretzky for much of the third period of Game 2, trying to send a message about accountability. Keenan's hard-nosed tactics did seem to spur Gretzky in the short term. However, the Blues ultimately fell in 7 games to Detroit, eliminated on a double overtime goal by Steve Yzerman that famously came off a Gretzky turnover at the blue line. That crushing loss on May 16, 1996, in what would be Gretzky's final game as a Blue, ended the St. Louis Blues Stanley Cup bid. Behind the scenes, however, the Gretzky-Keenan relationship was falling apart, and it was falling apart fast. The Blues had initially prepared a 3-year contract extension for Gretzky in April, believing his experience and star power could benefit the club beyond 1996, but Keenan, displeased that Gretzky hadn't met his every expectation, pulled the offer off the table. The hard-driving coach, who already had a history of clashing with star players like Brett Hull, effectively drove Gretzky away. The main issue is that the Blues gave Keenan too much power. One journalist stated, "Keenan was the man who acquired Gretzky, but he was also the man who single-handedly drove him out." Gretzky, for his part, had genuinely enjoyed the city and his teammates, later stating that he would have finished his career in the St. Louis Blues, but he did not enjoy playing for Keenan's abrasive coaching style. As summer came, the unhappiest possible ending unfolded. The Great One walked away as a free agent, signing with the New York Rangers and leaving the St. Louis Blues after just a few months. "I could tell that we weren't on the same wavelength," Gretzky said, reflecting that if he had to do it all over again, he might have remained in LA rather than join Keenan's Blues. For the Blues franchise, losing Gretzky so quickly was a bitter pill. They had mortgaged part of their future, albeit none of the traded youngsters became stars, and alienated other players in the process. Hull's feud with Keenan also had worsened that season, only to see their prize acquisition vanish without compensation. The Blues spiraled into mediocrity early next season, and Keenan was fired by December 1996. It's a major what-if in the Blues history. Had management chosen Gretzky over Keenan, perhaps Gretzky would have stayed and helped guide the team for a few more years. Gretzky himself believed he still had plenty to offer. He went on to post 3 more point-per-game seasons with the Rangers, and thought about playing alongside Hull, Chris Pronger, and Al MacInnis, which might have boosted his late career numbers even higher. Instead, the Blues gamble yielded only memories and a fleeting glimpse of greatness. For Gretzky, the St. Blues chapter became an odd stop for a legendary career, a reminder that even the game's biggest icon could find himself in the wrong situation. As one writer wrote, "Many fans forget Gretzky was ever a Blue at all. A one-of-a-kind legend in a one-off uniform, gone almost as soon as he arrived." Gretzky's misfit run in the St. Louis Blues showed that even legends can end up in the wrong place. But he wasn't the first. Decades earlier, Bobby Orr Boston's golden boy and a generational talent closed his career in a jersey that still feels wrong, the Chicago Blackhawks. In the list of hockey greats, Bobby Orr stands near the top, the defenseman who revolutionized the game with the Boston Bruins, winning 8 Norris trophies and 2 Stanley Cups. But by 1976, at age 28, Orr's once soaring career had been crippled by knee injuries. In a dramatic and ultimately ill-fated turn, Orr left Boston to sign with the Chicago Blackhawks in June 1976. This move came after a messy contract negotiation, in which Orr's longtime agent, Alan Eagleson, infamously misled him. The Bruins had actually offered Orr an extraordinary deal to stay, 5 years, nearly $2 million, plus an 18.5% ownership stake in the team. Eagleson told Orr the league wouldn't allow the partnership perk, and never even revealed that part of Boston's offer to his client. Believing the Bruins were lowballing him, their final offer guaranteed only $600,000 due to concerns about his knee. Orr felt insulted and became a free agent. The Blackhawks eagerly swooped him up. $3 million 5-year contract. The Blackhawks owner acknowledged the risk of the possible knee injury, but was happy to take the risk to bet on this legend. And Orr signed with Chicago, a shocking sight in a different Original 6 sweater. Chicago fans were optimistic but realistic. They knew Orr's injury history, yet dared to hope he could bring some magic and lead the Hawks back to glory. Orr himself gave a final glimpse of brilliance that September, suiting up for Team Canada and dominating the 1976 Cup as MVP. But the grind of the NHL season was another matter. As the 1976-77 season began, Orr's knees simply couldn't hold up anymore. He managed only 20 games in that season, and his teammates recalled that Orr would sometimes struggle to walk off the ice, his knees so swollen and painful. After attempting yet another surgery and sitting the entire 77-78 season out, Orr tried a brief comeback in fall 1978. It lasted just 6 games before reality set in. His body had enough. In November 1978, the 30-year-old Orr announced his retirement, ending one of hockey's greatest careers short. Over the 3 seasons under contract in Chicago, he appeared in a grand total of 26 games, tallying 27 points. He never played in the postseason for the Hawks. The Blackhawks almost got none of the boost they'd hoped for with him on the ice. What they did get was a cautionary tale about signing a player for his reputation rather than his future production. Orr's departure from Boston also left lasting bitterness once the truth emerged. He later learned how Eagleson had sabotaged the Bruins offer, a betrayal that contributed to Eagleson's downfall and Orr's own financial troubles post-retirement. Orr's legacy, of course, remains untouchable. He's entirely remembered as a Boston Bruin and one of the all-time greats. The Blackhawks years were strange and awkward, something that still makes fans uneasy to think about. Seeing Orr limp through those 26 games in Chicago underscored just how Superman he was in his prime, and how cruelly his career was cut short. It was a bittersweet final chapter for everyone involved, one best remembered for what might have been rather than what was. While Bobby Orr's move to Chicago was shaped by injury and betrayal, the next case came from hope and friendship. Years later, 2 stars chose their destination, not out of necessity, but ambition. Paul Kariya and Teemu Selänne reunited in Colorado, chasing a cup together on their own terms. But what looked like a perfect reunion, on paper, turned into one of the most disappointing experiments of the salary cap era. One of the most anticipated free agent coups of the early 2000s was the joint signing of Paul Kariya and Teemu Selänne by the Avalanche in July 2003. The longtime Anaheim Ducks tandem, close friends who had formed one of the league's most electric duos, shocked the world of hockey by reuniting in Denver, both taking significant pay cuts for a shot at a Stanley Cup. Kariya, the Ducks captain and franchise icon, was fresh off leading Anaheim to the 2003 Stanley Cup final, which they unfortunately lost in Game 7, and became a free agent when Anaheim declined to tender a $10 million qualifying offer. Selänne, who had been traded from the Ducks to San Jose in 2001, also hit the free agency after a disappointing year with the Sharks. Both players were 28 and hungry for a championship. According to Kariya, they made a hockey decision: forget the money, go where we can win. The place that immediately jumped out was Colorado, a team oozing with talent and recent championships. Within hours, on July 3rd, 2003, the Avalanche landed both superstars, signing Kariya for a $1.2 million contract and Selänne for $5.8 million on 1-year deals. It was something out of a video game. Suddenly, a roster that already featured Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Milan Hajduk, Rob Blake, and Adam Foote was adding 2 future Hall of Famers on the cheap. The Avalanche instantly became Stanley Cup favorites, a so-called super team built to steamroll the league. The excitement in Denver was sky high. Kariya and Selanne had dominated highlight reels in the 90s with their speed and scoring, and now they were joining the Avs squad that had won the Cups in 1996 and 2001. Fans and media eagerly anticipated a lethal power play and endless goals. As one retrospect put it, everyone thought the Colorado Avalanche were going to win the 2004 Stanley Cup. I mean, come on, they had to, and I quote, "Yet the season did not unfold according to script. Instead of reigniting their Ducks magic, both stars struggled through the worst seasons of their careers at that point. Kariya's Colorado tenure started off on the wrong foot when he suffered a sprained wrist just a few games into the campaign. The injury kept him out for weeks and disrupted any rhythm. He would end up playing only 51 games, tallying 11 goals and 25 points, partly numbers for a player who had averaged over a point per game in Anaheim. Selanne, meanwhile, was surprisingly snake-bitten. He was healthy enough to play 78 games, but boasted just 16 goals and 36 points, often looking a step slow and a poor fit in coach Tony Granato's system. His confidence seemed to erode as well. By the season's end, Selanne was demoted to the fourth line and even made a healthy scratch, a stunning fall for a former 76 goal scorer. The Avalanche still had a solid year, however, but they weren't the juggernaut everyone expected to be. Importantly, they lost the presence of legendary goalie Patrick Waugh, who had retired in 2003, and for the first time since their move to Denver, the Avs did not win their division. Come playoff time, and Kariya and Selanne hoped to erase the disappointment with clutch performances. Kariya did return and chipped in some offense, while Selanne continued to struggle. He even underwent knee surgery right after the season, suggesting he had been playing whilst hurt. The team won a tight first-round series, but in the second round, the Avs fell to the San Jose Sharks. Ironically, Selanne's old team, ending their golden era with a whimper. Neither Kariya nor Selanne scored in the series, and just like that, the dream duo fizzled. The aftermath was swift. The 2004-2005 NHL lockout hit, wiping out the next season. Colorado faced the cap constraints, parted ways not only with Kariya and Selanne, but also Forsberg and Foote in the summer of 2005. Kariya and Selanne never got a chance to score together. Their one-year experiment was over almost before it began. Selanne returned to Anaheim after the lockout and incredibly bounced back with a 40-goal, 90-point season in 2005-2006. He went on to finally hoist the Stanley Cup in 2007 with the Ducks, cementing his legacy as an all-time great in Anaheim. Kariya, however, had a more frustrating path. He signed with the Predators and posted a strong 85-point season, but a cup eluded him. Later, he joined the St. Louis Blues, where injuries, including concussion issues, eventually ended his career in 2010. For years after, Kariya stepped away from the game entirely, before finally re-emerging to accept a Hall of Fame induction in 2017, fittingly alongside his friend, Selanne. In Denver, the Kariya-Selanne chapter is remembered as a fascinating what-if. On paper, it looked unbeatable, but on the ice, it was a different story. Some chalk it up to injuries and bad timing, others note that Colorado's needs were perhaps better filled with grittier role players than two former alpha stars trying to find their footing on a new team. In any case, it just wasn't the right fit at the right time. Kariya and Selanne's Colorado reunion was a calculated gamble that never found its rhythm, but sometimes it's not about chasing chemistry, it's about chasing closure. That was the case for Mike Modano, who returned home to Michigan for one final season with the Red Wings. It was meant to be a storybook ending. Instead, it became a painful reminder that even legends can overstay their goodbye. When Mike Modano signed with the Red Wings organization in the summer of 2010, it was a homecoming and a farewell tour all in one. Modano was the face of the Minnesota/Dallas franchise for over 2 decades, a Stanley Cup champion in 1999, the all-time leading scorer among US-born players, and a future Hall of Famer. At 40 years old, his best days were behind him, and the Dallas Stars had decided not to re-sign their longtime icon. The Red Wings, however, saw an opportunity. Modano was a native of the Detroit area, and Detroit's veteran-led roster had a spot for a savvy depth center with winning experience. In August 2010, Modano signed a one-year deal with the Red Wings for what he hoped would be a storybook final season, perhaps capped with another Stanley Cup on home turf. It's a chance to come home and make one more run, Modano said at the time. Reality, unfortunately, did not cooperate. Modano's stint in Detroit started fine. He even scored in his very first game as a Red Wing, but just a couple weeks into the season came a freak injury. On November 26, 2010, in a game against Columbus, Modano's wrist was slashed by an opposing player's skate. The injury was severe and required surgery. It sidelined him for nearly half the season. By the time he returned in late March 2011, Modano was struggling to get back to game shape and find a role in a deep Red Wings lineup. He managed to appear in only 40 regular season games, recording 4 goals and 15 points, a far cry from his prime production. Still, as the playoffs approached, Modano was healthy and eager to contribute to Detroit's cup chase. The Red Wings finished with 104 points and had series his aspirations, but in a move that stunned many, coach Mike Babcock elected to make Modano a healthy scratch, including in the final games of the regular season. In fact, Modano was scratched on what would have been the 1,500th game of his NHL career, leaving him stuck at 1,499 games. For a veteran, it was a bitter pill to swallow, Modano later admitted. He had envisioned a celebratory end to his career, and not an abrupt benching. After the Red Wings were eliminated by the Sharks, Modano's NHL career quietly came to an end. He did not return the next season, and ended his career just one game short of 1,500. Modano acknowledged the mixed emotions. He loved the chance to play for his childhood team, but the finish left a sour taste. I would have hit that 1,500 right on the nose in our last game, but I got healthy scratched, so I ended up with 1,499. Yeah, it was a bitter pill. It would have been nice to finish on some type of high note after that season I went through in Detroit, he said in 2021. The Modano experiment in Detroit illustrated how even a seemingly perfect script can get derailed. The Red Wings had hoped Modano's leadership and offense would put them over the top. Instead, he was mostly a non-factor due to the injury and limited use. Modano himself will be forever associated with Dallas, where his number 9 was retired in the rafters. If anything, seeing him in a Red Wings jersey was a strange sight for hockey fans. And before we get to the next person on the list, only a small portion of my viewers are subscribed to the channel, so if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Mike Modano's return to Detroit was built on nostalgia, a hometown hero looking for one last run. But just like Modano, Daniel Alfredsson left the only franchise he'd ever known in search of something more. His departure from Ottawa wasn't just shocking, it was emotional. Few franchise legends have been as synonymous with one team as Daniel Alfredsson, who was with the Ottawa Senators for 17 seasons. Alfredsson was Ottawa's heart and soul, team captain, all-time leading scorer, and the face of the franchise's rise from expansion to Stanley Cup contender. That's why it sent shockwaves through the hockey world in summer 2013, when the 40-year-old announced he was leaving Ottawa to sign with the Detroit Red Wings. His departure was steeped in controversy and emotion. Alfredsson cited the pursuit of an elusive Stanley Cup as a primary motivator. I'm really excited to get this opportunity at this stage of my career to go for a Stanley Cup and fulfill a long-time dream, he said upon signing a one-year contract with Detroit. He admitted it was a very difficult decision to leave Ottawa after 18 years, one he hadn't envisioned weeks earlier. But as free agency loomed, thoughts of Detroit's winning culture crept in, and Alfredsson made a self-described selfish decision to put these cup aspirations first. There were also some behind-the-scene tensions. Alfredsson felt the Senators hadn't adequately compensated him in a previous contract. His 2012 to 2013 salary had only been $1 million as part of a deal, and reportedly expected a make-good offer that didn't materialize. Whatever the mix of reasons, seeing Ottawa's favorite son in a Red Wings jersey was a surreal experience for everyone involved. In Detroit, Alfredsson stepped into a veteran-landed lineup. The Red Wings were transitioning to the Eastern Conference in 2013 to 2014, and their hope was that Alfredsson's scoring touch and leadership would keep their long playoff streak alive and maybe propel a deep run. On the ice, he was productive, though no longer, of course, in his prime. He posted 18 goals, 49 points in 68 games, tying for the team lead in scoring. Solid numbers for a 41-year-old. Yet his storybook ending, Alfredsson sought a Stanley Cup, did not materialize. The 2013-2014 Red Wings were plagued by injuries and inconsistency. They did extend the franchise playoff streak, making it 23 consecutive seasons, but as a wildcard, with a first-round matchup against the powerhouse Boston Bruins, they did struggle quite a bit. In those playoffs, Alfredsson contributed 5 points, but Detroit bowed out in meekly 5 games. Alfredsson's own body was starting to betray him as well. He battled a chronic back issue that postseason and into the offseason. After that single season in Detroit, Alfredsson strongly considered playing one more year, but the lingering back problems forced him to hang up the skates for good in December of 2014. He retired as a Senator, signing a one-day contract to officially end his career in Ottawa. For the Sens fans, Alfredsson's exit was painful. The manner of his leaving and the lack of a happy ending in Detroit made it feel like an unnecessary move. The Senators struggled in his absence, and their owner and GM received heavy criticism for not retaining their captain. In Detroit, he was a respected veteran presence, but 1 year was not enough time to cement any lasting legacy. He's always remembered as a Senator who briefly changed his path. As Alfredsson himself stated, "I had nothing but great times in Ottawa, and I didn't really see myself making a change. But sometimes a player's competitive fire leads to an unexpected journey, one that for the better or worse becomes part of their story." Alfredsson's shift to Detroit was jarring, an icon stepping outside his legacy for one last shot at glory. But if that felt strange, Martin Brodeur in a St. Louis Blues jersey was almost unthinkable. If one player seemed destined to wear only one jersey, it was Martin Brodeur, the legendary goaltender of the New Jersey Devils. Brodeur spent 21 seasons in net for the Devils, leading them to 3 Stanley Cups and setting NHL records in wins and shutouts that may never be broken. By 2014, however, the 42-year-old Brodeur found himself in an unfamiliar position. New Jersey was moving on with younger goalie Corey Schneider, and Brodeur was a free agent without a starting job. Unwilling just to retire yet, Brodeur waited for an opportunity to prove he could still contribute. That chance finally came in the late fall of 2014 with the St. Louis Blues, when the Blues starter Brian Elliott went down with a knee injury. The team sought veteran help and signed Brodeur in December to a 1-year deal. It was surreal for the hockey world to see Brodeur in a Blues uniform. The stint was brief and somewhat rocky. He made his Blues debut on December 4th, 2014 and notched his first win shortly after. But overall, his performances were mixed. In 7 games, he recorded a 3.30 record and a 2.87 goals against average with a .899 save percentage. Numbers that are not quite surprising considering his age. He did flash some vintage brilliance with one memorable moment, a 3-0 shutout against the Colorado Avalanche, which marked the 125th and final shutout of his career. That milestone aside, Brodeur sometimes struggled to adapt to the Blues system and faced the natural challenge of joining a new team mid-season after sitting out for months. By mid-January, Elliott was healthy again, and Brodeur was relegated to the number 3 goalie. Rather than stick around as a practice netminder, Brodeur chose to step away gracefully. In late January 2015, he announced his retirement as an active player and accepted a job in the Blues front office for the remainder of the season. For Brodeur, playing in St. Louis was all about personal desire and closure. I didn't want there to be that void in my career, asking myself later, what if? I wanted to see what was out there, he told reporters, insisting he had no regrets about retiring as a Blue instead of solely as a Devil. He enjoyed the brief ride for what it was. Teammates and Blues staff spoke highly of Brodeur's professionalism and the positive influence he had on the team in his short term. From the Blues' perspective, the move was low risk and made for an intriguing storyline. A Hall of Famer chasing one more chance. His legacy, however, remains firmly tied to New Jersey. If anything, his short stint in the Blues just showed the competitive drive that made him great, even after achieving everything. People will judge me for whatever they want. If it's me coming back and trying something here in St. Louis, or thinking I should have retired 5 years ago, Brodeur said bluntly. I don't really care. It's all about me. I'm living this dream, and it's hard to let it go sometimes. Brodeur's brief stop in St. Louis was about ending on his own terms. One last taste of the game before walking away. But the next case is something different entirely. Ilya Kovalchuk wasn't at the end of his career. He was in his prime, locked into a massive deal with the New Jersey Devils, and yet, in one of the most shocking exits in NHL history, he walked away from it all, leaving the Devils, the league, and $77 million behind. The saga of Ilya Kovalchuk and the New Jersey Devils is a cautionary tale of a blockbuster signing that delivered flashes of success, but ultimately ended in stunning disappointment. Kovalchuk was one of the NHL's most dynamic goal scorers of the 2000s, a 2-time 50-goal man, and the face of the Atlanta Thrashers franchise. In February 2010, with Atlanta unable to re-sign him, the Thrashers traded the 26-year-old Kovalchuk to the Devils, who viewed him as a franchise cornerstone. New Jersey then doubled down in the offseason, signing Kovalchuk to an unprecedented contract, initially a 17-year, $102 million deal. This contract was so audacious, it would have kept Kovalchuk under contract until age 44, that the NHL rejected it for the salary cap circumvention. The Devils and Kovalchuk regrouped and signed a slightly shorter, 15-year, $100 million contract, which the league allowed, but not without punishment. New Jersey was fined $3 million and was forced to forfeit a future first-round draft pick for attempting to circumvent the cap with the first contract. The stage was set, Kovalchuk had his massive deal, and the Devils had their superstar locked up. On the ice, the early returns were mixed. Kovalchuk's first season in New Jersey was turbulent. The Devils surprisingly missed the playoffs, and Kovalchuk's scoring was good, but not earth-shattering. But the next year, 2011 to 2012, everything seemed to validate the signing. Kovalchuk was outstanding, scoring 37 goals and 83 points, and in the 2012 playoffs, he led the entire NHL in scoring with 19 points, as the Devils made a Cinderella run to the Stanley Cup final. It looked like Kovalchuk and New Jersey were a perfect match after all. He had transitioned his game to fit with the Devils' defensive-first style, and the team was within 2 wins of a championship. However, they lost in 6 games to the Los Angeles Kings. But just 1 year later, the partnership came to a shocking end. On July 11th, 2013, at aged 30 and only 3 seasons into his 15-year contract, Kovalchuk retired from the NHL and walked away from the Devils. He announced he was returning home to Russia and was giving up the $77 million still owed to him over 12 remaining years. This bombshell move stunned the hockey world. Kovalchuk's announcement, as the team put it, was that he was retiring from the NHL, which made him free to sign in the KHL without breach of contract. Indeed, within days, he inked a deal with the SKA St. Petersburg reportedly worth even more per year and tax-free than his NHL contract. The Devils, a proud franchise, suddenly lost their forward star for absolutely nothing in return. General manager Lou Lamoriello admitted he wasn't surprised. He had known Kovalchuk had thoughts of staying in Russia after enjoying playing there during the 2012-2013 lockout. Kovalchuk himself said it was a family decision, that he wanted his wife and young children to live in Russia, and that it had been on his mind for some time. Though I decided to return this past season, Lou was aware of my desire to go back home and have my family there with me, Kovalchuk explained in his statement. Devils fans, however, were caught off guard and felt betrayed. One day he's the cornerstone, the next day he's gone. As then Washington coach and former Devils assistant Adam Oates said it, "It's sad for our league. That's one of our good players and we're going to miss him." The fallout for New Jersey was significant. Kovalchuk's exit suddenly left a gaping hole in the lineup and $6.7 million of cap space that in mid-July, few quality players were around to use it on. The NHL did give the Devils a bit of a relief by dismissing the first round pick penalty, but the damage was done. The Devils would struggle offensively in the years after and missed the playoffs for several seasons in a row. Meanwhile, Kovalchuk thrived in the KHL, winning championships there and an Olympic gold with Team Russia. In 2018, he eventually returned to the NHL for a brief second stint with Los Angeles and others, but never had the same impact. From a legacy standpoint, Kovalchuk's exit is decisive. Some Devils fans saw it as betrayal, walking away from a massive contract and the team's future. Others pointed out he gave up $77 million, suggesting it wasn't just about money. Still, it was nearly unheard of a superstar in his prime leaving the NHL by choice. What could have been a defining era in New Jersey became a cautionary tale. As Lou Lamoriello put it plainly, he will not be playing here at his desire. Each of these moves tells a story of stars chasing one last shot, only to find themselves in the wrong jersey at the wrong time. Some were brief rentals, others legacy-defining detours, but all serve as reminders that even legends can struggle in unfamiliar settings. Age, injuries, bad timing, whatever the reason. Still, these moments live on as unforgettable footnotes in hockey history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and join as a channel member if you want to see more stories like these. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.